Now we turn to the Boao Forum for Asia this year. It has entered the fourth day. Discussions have been around reform, innovation and sustainable development. Participants are trying to explore new ways to reform emerging economies in Asia. For more on that, let's cross live to our reporter Guanxing, who's been following the event very closely in Boao. Hello, Guanxing, tell us the highlights of Friday.
Afternoon, Pandon. Well, a buzzword today is China-U.S. relations. Some see the two largest economies in the world are in fierce competition, but others see a symbolic relationship. To find more on this, our studio discussions are joined by two distinguished guests, Mr. Carlos Gutierrez, chairman of Albright Stonebridge Group and also the former U.S. Commerce Secretary. Thank you for joining us. And Dr. Yu Kong-Huang, he was the director of World Bank's China Bureau. Thank you so much for joining us on CCTV News today. Well, latest figures released today show China's economy are slowing in the first quarter. And we also know that the U.S. has been a relatively bright spot in world economic recovery this year with projection of around 3% growth rate. Mr. Gutierrez, we know there is an interdependency between the two largest economies. Are you worried about the downside risks of China's economy?
Well, you know, as the Premier said yesterday, China may grow 7.5%, a range up or down. That's a very strong growth rate. The worry, of course, is that there has been a lot of capacity added in China, and that is already in GDP numbers that came in previously. And in order to keep that moving and pay off the debt that it took to add that capacity and use that capacity, you need to continue to grow. So 7.5% is a very good number, and most countries in the world would love to get near that. But because of the need to keep the machine going, 7.5% is necessary, close to 7.5%.
So there are more important structural issues in the economy that need to be focused on. And Dr. Huang, let's turn to China-U.S. economic relations. Some people see the two countries as a producer and a consumer. That might be true in the past, but China is trying to shift its economic growth model away from the export sector. In your opinion, how much has been changed?
This is an interesting issue. The United States consumes 70% of its output, and there's concern in the United States that they consume too much and they should invest a little bit more. Here in China, they consume 75% of their output. So the concern is they should consume a little bit more and perhaps invest a little bit less. But here's China growing at 7.5% a year. Consumption is growing at 9% a year in real terms, the highest in the world by far. It actually is growing in terms of pure consumption, demand globally, twice as fast as the United States. So in some ways, I don't think China needs to be apologetic about its consumption. It's actually growing very robustly.
We're talking about demand and the supply side. I remember that when Mr. Gutierrez, when you were the Commerce Secretary for the United States, there were a lot of criticism about China's currency manipulation, and that was blamed for the imbalances between China and the U.S. But now China's Finance Minister Lou Jiwei said the U.S. is lagging behind in this rebalancing efforts, meaning maybe you're consuming too much. Do you agree with that?
Well, you know, 70% of our economy is consumer consumption, and that's a big part of the U.S. economy. Consumers have delevered their balance sheet a little bit. Corporations have delevered quite a bit. The big issue in the U.S., ironically, is student loans. So there is still some rebalancing to do, but if you compare the U.S. recovery to the European Union, for example, it's a huge difference. The U.S. has made a lot of progress, whereas other countries, for example, the European Union, have remained relatively stagnant.
It's a good thing that we are both approaching in the right direction. Well, let's talk about the speech about Premier Li Keqiang and he made yesterday, and he said China takes an open attitude to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which China has been excluded. And some people say China should participate. What is your opinion on that? What are the upside and downside?
Well, what we see today are mega trade agreements, the TPP being one, with the U.S. and other countries, some Asian countries basically trying to forge that agreement. It's a very high standard agreement. I think there are lots of